I've got a really exciting up-close video for you today showing you the brand new Nuvo Expanding Mousse. So it's a similar kind of product, it's in the same kind of pot as your Nuvo Embellishment Mousse, but it has a grey lid so that you can tell the difference. Here is a Nuvo Embellishment Mousse, and you can see the Expanding Mousse has got a grey lid so you can easily identify them. And it's the same kind of gorgeous metallic sheen, except you apply heat to it and it puffs up, and it's a really cool look. If you apply it more thinly, you kind of get that sort of flocked velvety look when you heat it, but if you apply it thicker, you get this really cool puffing up look. So I'm going to go through lots of little experiments that I've done testing it in different ways, and show you all my samples as well. So there's 8 colours in the range, and they've got really lovely names too. They come obviously in the lovely pot with Nuvo Expanding Mousse on the top, and it tells you the instructions for use on the bottom, and it gives you the name as well. So this one's called Worn Linen, which I really like. And then when you open them up, they're sealed on the inside. And yeah, so, well, with my embellishment mousses, I took this foil off, and it was probably a bad idea because, you know, the foil sort of stops them from drying out so much. So with the expanding mousses, I definitely recommend only like piercing the foil, because from a chemistry point of view, I think the expanding stuff works from the evaporation of the water content of the product. So the moister you can keep it, I think the better it will puff up. But I'm not 100% certain of that, that's just what I think. But yeah, so I would recommend sort of having your pot and just doing this to it and peeling up and then poking your spatula in to get the mousse out, rather than doing that and taking the whole thing off. But this is what it looks like. That's obviously I've been using this one a lot. If I open up maybe this one, yeah, you can still see some of the original texture that was on the top of it. So that's what it looks like, and it is a much moister product than the Nuvo Embellishment Mousse anyway in the first place, obviously, because I think the chemistry behind it is that it's the water content that makes it puff up really well. So you get 8 different colours. The colours are Worn Linen, which is a gorgeous white colour, which is brilliant. I really love this one because you can mix this with any of these colours to create a lighter shade of the colour, which I'll show you in some of my samples. But you can also mix this with your Nuvo Aquaflows. Obviously you don't want to add too much because you're going to make this even wetter. However, it does, well, from my little experiments, I think it puffs up more because you've added more moisture in it. That's why I'm thinking it's the moisture that makes it puff. The next colour you get is Grey Matter, which is a gorgeous silver colour. Then you get Tuscan Gold, which is a really nice gold colour. It's a proper sort of old gold, good for Christmas projects. Then you get Mustard Seed, which is a lovely copper colour. I really like this one. I've just finished a sample using this one. It's really beautiful. Then you get Red Leather, which again, great for Christmas. Gorgeous red colour. You get Boatyard Blue. I really like this one. I'll show you a sample that I've used this one on. This one is Bramley Apple. Really lovely green. Again, great for Christmas with the red and the gold as well. And my favourite, a purple one. This one's called Misted Mauve. So, gorgeous purple colour. So they're the 8 colours that you get in the collection. I literally just before starting filming just did this and spread a little bit of each of them through a stencil so that I can show you how they work. It's still damp, I can feel that the back of the card's still cold, so You can use either kind of heat tool to heat this. I did notice that when using the directional heat tool, I saw more steam coming off when heating it, rather than when I was using sort of lower powered heat tool. But you can use both. Both of them work. I've used both in my samples, so whichever one you have is fine to use. So this is going to be noisy, so I might just put some music over it, but I'm going to show you how they puff up. Okay, so there is all of the different colours puffed up. Don't they look amazing? And I was probably holding the heat tool about an inch or inch and a half away from it whilst I was heating it, and you don't want to stay in the same place for too long because I think it can burn. I haven't actually burnt it, but I think it can burn. Yeah, so they're the gorgeous colours all puffed up. This one is going to be great for snow, and I'll show you an experiment I was doing with this as well. So that's the worn linen, the grey matter, worn linen, grey matter, what was the gold called? Tuscan gold, that's mustard seed, that's red leather, that's boatyard blue, that's Bramley apple, and that's misted mauve. So they're really gorgeous palette of colours, and they're quite a vintagey, muted palette of colours too, which go with another new product that's coming out soon. So they're the gorgeous colours, and that's the amazing texture that it gives. I really love how it looks, especially when you've used it through a stencil, because usually when you use like the normal Nuvo embellishment mousse through a stencil, you get quite a sharp defined edge on the edge of your image. Obviously where you've pulled the stencil off you get a sharp edge, but when you puff it, obviously the whole top layer puffs up, so it kind of gives more of a nice rounded effect, and you can feel that it is squidgy. Not like really squidgy though, I mean you can press on it and it's not doing much, and you can even die cut through it as well. So I will go on to show you the little experiments that I did when I first got mine. Okay, so here are some of my little experiments that I was doing. All of these I'd brushed on some of the mousse first and then heated it straight away. This was quite a thin application. This was using the palette knife to create more texture. This was leaving thicker parts of mousse, and again this was adding more texture again too. And you can see where it's thinner, it kind of gives the same kind of shine you'd get if you just use normal embellishment mousse as well. and obviously you've got that gorgeous texture where it's puffed up, and you get the sheen as well when it's puffed too. And when you've got a really thin application, it kind of looks like that faux flocking effect, which is really nice. I'll show you that on some other samples in a minute as well. Okay, so that was my first experiment. Then I wondered, would it still dry if you didn't heat it? So this was the same two colours. This one is just dried normally, and it dries practically just like Nuvo Embellishment Mousse, with the texture in it, and just pearlescent with the texture. And then this was obviously the same colours and heated, so that's all lovely and puffy. And obviously that was a really thick piece there that's gone nice and puffy. Then I wondered if it would still puff once you had let it dry. So, I mean, a really good test would be if that puffed now, wouldn't it? Should I try it? See if it does. Okay, the answer to that is no. So if you've left it to dry for like more than overnight, it's not going to puff, but it dries with the texture like a normal embellishment mousse. If you leave it to dry for like an hour, like I did for this one, it is still going to puff, because it's still going to have that moisture content in it that's going to allow it to puff up. Okay, so that's solved that argument. If you heat it straight away out of the pot, it's going to puff really, really well. If you leave it for like an hour, it's still going to puff nicely. So that means you don't have to rush heating it once you've applied it. You can go and wash the stencil, make sure that's nice and clean, and then come back and heat it. So that's quite nice to know. But if you have let it dry and it's really solid, it's not going to puff after that. Okay, so another experiment is, you know, there's that technique of where you put like texture paste down and then you sprinkle embossing powder over it, you leave it to dry, and then you can heat it so you get the really raised effect with the gorgeous embossing powder effect on. Well, it works with this too. So again, obviously I didn't leave this to dry overnight because then it wouldn't puff. So I left this for about an hour again. So just so it's not completely wet, but you can do it when it's completely wet actually, because I've done it on some of my samples, but just using less embossing powder, not covering the whole thing. So that's what that looks like when you puff it, when it's got powder on top of it. Then I just did a couple of experiments using this little dotty stencil that I've got. That's the misted mauve and that's the red leather, and you get a really nice dimension on it. This is a bit of a thicker stencil, so it gives a really good dimension. Then I thought I would experiment and see, because I'm thinking of using the white one as snow for Christmas, so I wondered if you could pipe it so you could get it on in more accurate places, or have it in dots so that it looks like snow, and you can. If I was doing it again, I would mix up the powder, or not the powder, the Nuvo mousse more to make it more of a creamy texture. But if you use one of these little Ziploc bags, squish some of the mousse into a bottom corner, cut a tiny little corner off, and then squeeze it and put pressure on it so it comes out, you can pipe it. So this it's gone really textured and puffy. Look at that one there. Look how puffed up it went. But you can see it looks a little bit cracky. So I think if you sort of whipped up the mousse first into a really creamy consistency and then did the piping, I think it would work better. So I might give that a try sometime. Oh, I could do it in the video actually. Wait a second, I will do it. So This was on vellum. I just wondered if it would still work on vellum, because vellum doesn't always, well, it doesn't like wet materials, and it doesn't like to be heated either, and it is a little bit buckly still, but it does work. So there's a sample that I've done using this technique too, so I will show you that. And then I was wondering, do the colours mix together really nicely? And they do. This was red leather and the Tuscan gold mixed together through a different, well, the same tonic stencil I used for that sample. So that looks really nice too. Then I wondered, can you colour it? Because you get a white one. So I was like, oh well, it'd be really nice to colour it. And you can. You can use your Aquaflows. I think I said that earlier. Obviously you don't want to add too much, but a few drops of this to like a teaspoon of mousse, you know, it's not going to do much harm to it. And look at the cool results. This was mixing that one in. This was a few drops of true turquoise mixed into the, what's it called, worn linen? Yes, worn linen. And I reckon adding that extra bit of moisture actually makes it puff more, because look how puffy that is. Really gorgeous result. And then finally I wondered if it would pick up the colour. So here I've added some Picto Raspberry distress ink onto a piece of card, and then I've swiped over the worn linen over the top, and it doesn't actually pick up the colour. I mean, in this section here, this was obviously because I'd done it quite thinly and it picked up the ink while it was wet, but once it's puffed, it is actually white on top of the pink background, so that's another nice thing to know. So let me just quickly do the piping to show you actually. So I'm going to do it with some gold. So got a little pot here actually. It's a bit dirty, but anyway. So I'm just going to take some of the gold and put it into the pot. And then just mix it up into a nice creamy consistency. Just like that. So it's more creamy. And then put it into one of these bags. Try and get it right down into a corner. And then I squidge it right into that corner. I mean, you obviously are going to waste a little bit because you're putting it into the bag, but hopefully if this works better, I think it's worth wasting a tiny little piece. So you want to cut a little, you're just making like a little piping bag then, and then I think that's going to work really well. So let's give it a go. See if I can, oh, I don't know if I can write something. I think it's working better than my first attempt at it. And then let's try a dot. Just do a squiggle to use the last of it up. There's a bit left still. Okay, let's just see what happens. Wow, look at those puffy effects. That is so cool. That is actually puffed and it's going to stay that. That's quite hot still. It's going to stay that 3D. Look at the heart. So it does work piping it. And well, it works better if you mix it. You see, this was my first attempt where I'd left it and I hadn't mixed it. And then that's when you've mixed it more. So you can pipe it too. So that's a really cool thing to know. Okay, so I've still got all my samples that I've just made and I haven't sent off to Tonic yet. So I thought I would show you some of the ways I have used it. I've also used the new vintage Nuvo drops in these samples too, and there will be another video up talking about them as well. So, where do I start? Okay, I'll just start with this one. So I just finished this one. These three are in the same video. So this is using one of Tonic's brand new stencils. It's this one. And I used the mustard seed and the misted mauve, and I also mixed some misted mauve with the French wine Nuvo Aquaflow to get a sort of intermediate colour. It didn't change the colour that much, but it's quite nice to know that you can mix them all together. So I actually made these two cards at the same time. You can see that the stencil matches up between them, because I thought you only got to clean the stencil once then, but you got two cards out of it. So I love this. I love the effect that it gives, and also in this one I did my, well, the technique that I'm calling like encrusted expanding mousse. So this is the Nuvo Gold Enchantment embossing powder. It's their glittery gold embossing powder, and once I'd scraped all of the expanding mousse through the stencil, I pulled the stencil off and then I just sprinkled in some little areas of the glittery embossing powder, and you get this really cool encrusted look, which I really, really like. So that's how I did that. And then, so that's obviously two of them the same, and I did the border the same way, doing that encrusted technique. I just squished on some of the two different colours of mousses, and then did some little clumps of the embossing powder. Another thing that I've discovered is that you can add the puffy mousse to tiny word die cuts and it still puffs. All you do is die cut your word, then you just take a bit of the mousse on your fingers and dab it over it, making sure to give it a little bit of texture and apply it a little bit thickly. It doesn't actually have to be very thick at all, and just tap it all over. And then again on this one I've sprinkled in some of that embossing powder, but then you heat it and look at that. It looks like it's aged metal or something. It's really cool, but it's actually puffed on a tiny little word. It's actually puffed up, which is so amazing. And I've done it on that Inspire as well for the other card. And this is a video that has all three cards in, so that should be up on my main channel. I'm not sure when I'm going to put this one up yet, so but this will definitely be up on my main channel by the time this video goes up. Then this one, so I keep saying I took the misted mauve that I'd mixed with the baked cherry and then the mustard seed as well, and I just used my palette knife to scrape them across the card, leaving some areas thicker, especially towards the edges. Then I heated it and then I die cut it. So I die cut an octagon out of it, and it did squash it, but I think that looks really cool still. So it puffed it into all these dotty bits, and then it did squash it in the die cutting machine, but I think it still gives a really cool look actually. And then I did the sentiment in the same way as the others, because this is all three of those were in the same video because it's the same colourway. I was inspired by the Arabian Nights colour trend for this one, using the copper and the purple together. So that's those three, which is one video. Another video which will be on my main channel as well, is this one. Again, it's using that encrusted technique around the edge. This was using Boatyard Blue, and I sprinkled in, what's it called? The Paradise Blue Sparkle Dust from Nuvo. So you just squidge this on with your palette knife, and then while it's still wet you sprinkle in the glitter, and then you just heat it, and it gives this really cool encrusted look. And then for this little strip here, I just swiped on some of the Bramley Apple onto a piece of card and heated it. Didn't put any glitter in that one. So that's how I've used it on this card. Then, which one shall I show you now? Yeah, so these two are kind of a similar technique. So you can see here in this frame I have used the Bramley Apple. So how I did this, there's a video on this one too. This is the, what's it called, Deco Square Layering die set that came out with the milestone numbers and little accent dies. So I die cut it out of white card, and then I die cut just the inside and outside, so you had a solid frame from the white card, stuck them both together, then took the mousse and scraped it over the top as if it was a stencil, but obviously you're not removing the outside piece, you're leaving it there. Then I heated it, and then I added another die cut over the top. So I think that looks really cool. Kind of looks like reptile skin as well, which is really interesting look. So that's that. And then this is a similar way of using it. So for these I did the same thing, but I was using a solid heart rather than an intricate die. But I cut the aperture out, stuck it to a piece of white card, and then scraped the paste over and then heated it. So yeah, and this one actually, so I'd scraped some of the paste over on this heart and I heated it, but it wasn't really puffing because I hadn't added enough, and I wanted it to be a nice puffy look because this is a large heart, so I wanted it to have some really cool puffy detail. So I just scraped over a thicker layer over the top and heated it again, and it was fine. So if you do that and you think you want it to be a puffier look, but it didn't work that way the first time, you can just add a bit more on top and heat it again. So that's another good thing to know. So that's that. Those two are both separate videos, which will be up on my main channel. I forgot to say on this card, this colour does not come in the 8 colours. This is the worn linen mixed with a tiny bit of the red leather, and you get a gorgeous pale pink colour, which matches perfectly the dusty rose colour. Is it dusty? Yeah, dusty rose colour from the Nuvo Vintage drops. So I thought I'd better mention that. So that pink is worn linen and a tiny bit of red leather mixed together. So, okay, this card, I really love how this card came out. You can tell that this one inspired the first ones I showed you. This one I swiped on some of the Metro Grey ink into the background before I did the stenciling. The other one I'd used Acorn Brown. So this was taking the worn linen, I told you that was one of my favourites, I've used it quite a lot, and the Boatyard Blue. And so to begin with I just scraped through worn linen, then I mixed worn linen and Boatyard Blue together and scraped through that in the middle section and brought some of it up in a sort of patchy manner up to the top, and then I just added the neat Boatyard Blue at the bottom as well, so you kind of get an ombre look. And then I pulled the stencil off, and then I sprinkled in some of this. So you don't have to just use the really fine glitter. This is the normal Nuvo Pure Sheen glitter. This one's the Ice White. That still works too. It's not too chunky, so which is good. Yeah, so that's got that glitter in this one. Just gives it a really nice sparkly effect. And then this was the first time I had thought of doing this. Look at that sentiment. Isn't that crazy? That is that really fine 4U sentiment strip die. It's actually got the puffy expanding mousse on it. It's crazy. You can get it to go on such a fine die cut. And I'll explain again the way I've done this. I haven't done it and then die cut it because you would squash it all. I have cut it, I think I cut it from blue card for this one, and then I just literally took some of the mousse on my finger and just dabbed it on, and it was actually a reasonably thin layer on this one too, so you just dab it all over, and then once you're happy you just heat it and it does the gorgeous, it kind of looks like flocking to me. I think it looks like flocking. So that's that card. That's one of my favourites. I really, really, really like the way that one came out. Okay, then this is the card where I have used the expanding mousse on the vellum. You can see it's a little bit wobbly, but I've just added these 2 pieces of card down the side with 3D foam behind just to hold it in place, and it kind of makes a feature of it as well. And you might notice that these colours aren't in the 8 colours either. So to begin with here, I mixed again the worn linen first with mango mimosa, then I mixed it with the spiced ginger, and then I mixed it with red apple. I only put a little bit of that on, but then I mixed the red apple and worn linen mixture with some of the Tuscan gold, and then put that in and then blend in a tiny bit of Tuscan gold at the bottom as well. So you really can experiment with these and create loads of cool different colourways just by using a few of your aquaflows or mixing a few of the colours together. So that was really, really cool. And then actually, oh yeah, I didn't show that one either. Well, I did show it, but I didn't mention it. So you might notice, you might have noticed this really thin, sort of illegible scripty stencil, and I've used it here as well. This is another one of Tonic's new stencils. It's this one, which is this gorgeous scripty, cursive scripty, and you wouldn't think that you could get the expanding mousse to work through, but it works amazingly well. Like this here, that word there, you can still see that it says always. Like, that's insane. That it's puffed up, but you can still see that it says always, so it's crazy. But yeah, so that's through that stencil too. I do recommend, as soon as you've used it through that stencil, to go and put it in some water and scrub at it with an old paintbrush, the stencil, because it has tiny little holes for the dots on the words, and the mousse will stay in them, and it might dry in there, and so you might not get the detail the next time you use it. So I just recommend using an old toothbrush just to brush out those bits in there. Okay, so that's those 2, and then finally this one, I made a bit of a mess up here, but this was just, I was getting some of the mousse on my finger and then just sort of scraping it along the edge to give a little edge, and then you heat it and it puffed up as well, so that works too. And again, this is using it on the sentiments. I just love how that looks, it's so amazing. And look, the With Love really looks flocked. I really like that too. So that's my up close look at the brand new Nuvo Expanding Mousse. Comes in 8 different colours, which are all these colours shown here. You've got worn linen, you've got grey matter, Tuscan gold, mustard seed, red leather, boatyard blue, Bramley apple and misted mauve. But you don't have to stop there, you can mix them up like however much you want. So these are just some of the samples that I have done using the gorgeous mousses. Yeah, so thanks for watching, and there will be another video that's going to be 5 ways to use the expanding mousse to recap on some of the things I've shown you in this video, so watch out for that video as well. Thank you for watching, bye!